Antoine, I'm going to start the talk by asking about somebody who can't be here, and that's your composer, James Horner, who's won 2 Oscars.
Yeah.
I want to recognize him, and I want to recognize what he did for this film. Can you talk a little bit about your collaboration with James Horner?
It was incredible. It was a lesson in filmmaking all over again. It was the first time I sat with a composer and went through every part of the movie, every scene, and we talked about the music, particularly for every scene. And it wasn't about him ever. It was always about making the picture better and making the emotions come through. And he became a great friend, and we'll miss him. God rest his soul.
Oona, people who saw Matilda on Broadway probably saw you playing Matilda. You won a Tony, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to hear about how you met up with this director and how you met your co-star, Jake. Can you tell us the story?
Yeah, okay, so I went to the audition, and yeah, and I guess they liked me, so I went to the, I went to the callback, and it was a chemistry read with Jake, and it was really, really cool. We did, like, a few scenes from the movie, and it was amazing, because at some point, like, I don't know who started crying first, but someone started crying first, and then I started crying, and it was, like, so emotional, and it was really, really cool. It was amazing, and I just...
Did Antoine start crying? Because that's a...
I did start crying. She was so good, I started crying.
Yeah.
Because she had scheduling issues. I was like, no, that can't happen. And Jake said to me, I'm not doing the movie without her.
Jake, we've been up here together talking about Prisoners. We've been up here talking about Nightcrawler. And for every movie you do, yeah, a lot of fans of both those movies. And we've talked before, but I think in this case, it's really important to talk about what you discover about a character through a physical transformation. Not about what you do in your workout, but what that work means, what the physical work means to the development of the soul of the character you're playing.
Well, specifically in the case of this movie, they work hand in hand. You know, I didn't know how to box when I first started, preparing for this role, and fear was a great motivator. Particularly when Antoine told me that he was going to shoot the movie and all the boxing scenes as realistically as possible, and he was going to have HBO cameramen actually filming, and that he was never going to go in really very often for a close-up. Most of it was going to be medium shots, and you're going to have to see our footwork, and he didn't want me to have a stunt double. So I thought, wow, I think he's telling I need to learn how to box. So so that was part of it, and when you immerse yourself in the world of boxing and you immerse yourself in the culture and the history and just the basic skills, I think as I've learned over time, if I give myself a running start, a good long running start, then if you run for long enough, you get into shape. And you start picking up and stealing from all the people that you interact with. And Antoine put me into all these situations where I would just get clues, And the physical transformation for me is not necessarily important all the time.
Right.
I believe that it needs to come from within. Just doesn't work, and it's no fun otherwise. But in the case of this and something like Nightcrawler, they felt like things and people or characters that were very far away, and I knew I would have to shape myself into them.
Mm-hmm. And Antoine, I don't know any directors who've done this before. You actually trained with Jake, is that right? Did you actually get in the ring with him? Or why was that important that you were kind of training alongside him? I know you've boxed for a while yourself.
Yeah, well, it's a trust. We were building trust. As a director, it's hard to ask someone to train, which he did 7 days a week, twice a day, every day, in every city we went to. So I knew that if I was in there with him, sweating, burning, feeling the pain, doing the ice baths, all the stuff we had to do that, we were building trust, and he knew I was 100% in it with him, as opposed to an outsider saying, yeah, do 700 more push-ups, do 700 more sit-ups, which we would do. I knew we were building trust. And also I knew there was going to be days where I would be tired making this movie and he would be tired. And I can always pull Jake aside, and I would say, You remember the days when you were being gutted out, when you were vomiting in the bucket, and I was over there and I was vomiting in the bucket? This is the day that it all pays off. And he would get up and go, let's go. And jump in the ring and go do it. So that's what we were doing, building trust.
Rachel, I want to ask about the screenplay gives us some clues about what Maureen and Billy's earlier life has been like. Kurt Sutter obviously has written a movie that's set, there's a little bit of flashback, there's a little bit of voiceover, but in talking to Antoine and talking to Jake, what kinds of things were important to you to figure out how this couple came together and what kept them together and the life into which they were thrust that they seemed somewhat ill-equipped to handle?
Right. Well, we spent a fair amount of time talking about that. We sort of took a stroll around New York when we first started talking about the movie and just sort of sat in a cafe and kind of mused on their beginnings and, talked about our first interaction ever and that it probably involved him hitting some kid in my honor, to defend my honor. So it was just kind of building, they have a long history together. I think it came out to like 22 years together, and they're really, it's them against the world. So it was important to understand just how fierce that connection was and keep building it. And yeah, we were kind of in our own little bubble, really. And yeah, so we just kind of kept.
But I'm asking about that bubble because the production design of the film, especially in your home, is very specific. And there's a quick shot of like a row of belts in the closet. And it looks like this is a couple that has been thrust into a life that they're ill-equipped to handle and they haven't designed it for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think sometimes they're in over their head and they're still like two little kids. Antoine talked about that a lot, that, they'd probably wake up every day and they're like, how the hell did this happen? How are we getting away with this? And, trying to find the joy in it and also not, and I think Maureen's trying to not get in over her head and try to keep them grounded and make sure. But, they really are fumbling in the dark half the time. Mm-hmm. We talked about how Oona's character is smarter than the two of them put together.
I wasn't kidding. She could take all you. Jake?
Yeah, I think the production design is pretty brilliant throughout the film in that, even when we move into foster care system, you're not seeing, this horrible space, that she's put in. You're seeing people who care, trying to do their best. The system that Billy and Maureen grew up in, that, I think was trying to help, probably not succeeding most of the time, is portrayed as sort of some semi-dangerous place that he feels is full of dangers actually doesn't look as dangerous. And then also their home, is just a space where they clearly have someone else designing it, someone else telling them what looks good, someone telling them, this is what wealth is, and I think that's a direct reflection also on the things they wear, and oftentimes Rachel would come up to me when she was trying on wardrobe and stuff, and she'd always ask me whether or not I thought something was sexy. She'd put it on. She'd be like, I like it. Okay, I'm gonna ask Jake. And they're like, Billy, what would Billy think? I'm like, oh yeah, I like that dress. And and that's we lived like that.
Right.
Antoine built a boxing ring in the production office. I trained in the production office every single day. If he needed me, he would call me up to his office. He would have auditions there. We had readings there. We all met there all the time. The wardrobe department was there. The prop department was there. And so everybody was sort of immersed in the training process. And Antoine was desperate to make sure that everybody knew what we had already done and the commitment that we had both already made for every department to have too. And everybody came together there.
And Rachel, did you get a chance to spend time in that gym? Because at one point in the film, your character says, I think he's getting hit too many times. Is that right? That she has been around that. Her character knows what it looks like and knows what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, I figured she would want to have a very intimate understanding of the boxing itself, and not only the way he specifically fights. So it was great. We'd be rehearsing, behind a curtain, and the other side is the gym, and the guys are going at it, and you can hear the punching bags going and the skipping ropes, and right from the beginning, boxing. We were completely immersed in boxing all the time, and and I got to get in the ring and train as well, and find out how hard it is. I just wanted to really understand the sacrifice it takes, and just physically what's required. I figured she would have a good understanding of that.
Una, I'm going to ask you about the scene where your character hits Jake's character. It's a very difficult scene to watch. I'm curious if it was a hard scene for you to do, and can you talk a little bit about doing that scene?
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't want to hit him. I felt really really bad. But at the same time, I knew my character had this bubbling anger at him and also sadness deep in there. But I think that like motivation kind of got me to be like, you know what? I just got to do this. And yeah, so